And, regardless of who's in office, when there's a crisis, the same people tend to be called upon to solve the crisis. So, a good example of that would be the 2008 economic crisis. BlackRock was basically sent in to help handle the banker bailouts. And then during COVID, when Trump was in office, BlackRock was brought in to essentially design the COVID fiscal policy, which the ramifications of which we're still dealing with. That's just one example. They agree about more biometric surveillance. They agree about digital ID, and they ultimately agree about programmable surveillable currency, whether it's a CBDC or a private bank digital currency that's also surveillable and programmable.
In the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, which led to a loss of over $2 trillion from the global economy and cost many traders and investors everything they had worked all their lives for, the New York Federal Reserve retained BlackRock to help oversee billions of dollars in ailing assets by helping to valuate and sell those assets on behalf of the government. The details of the arrangement, which till today remain mostly shrouded in mystery and secrecy, prompted criticism from several quarters, especially because while BlackRock was cozying up with Washington and helping to sell the assets, it was also helping its private clients buy the same assets. Talk about a conflict of interest. The criticism did not stop the plans, and there is no doubt that BlackRock benefited greatly from the arrangements because, in the decade following the crisis, it managed to increase its assets under management from about $1.3 trillion to almost $7 trillion. Today, the firm manages over $10 trillion. And since the Great Financial Crisis, it has helped the Federal Reserve through two other crises. BlackRock was called to help oversee the Fed's efforts to stabilize the bond market amid the economic turmoil caused by the coronavirus pandemic in 2020. Then, again, to help the US government arrange the sale of $114 billion in securities that were held by failed lenders, Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank in 2023. BlackRock's advisory business, which was called to help the Federal Reserve through these crises, has also helped the British Treasury, the Swiss National Bank, the European Central Bank, and the government of Greece. In her latest eye-opening discussion with journalist and YouTuber Natalie Brunell, popular investigative journalist Whitney Webb reveals just how joined at the hip the global elite class truly is. While we squabble about the little things they use to distract us, gender, race, political leanings, and others, they continue to play their games forever and completely united by their insatiable greed, unending deception, and their perpetual ability to rise above the little things for the sole aim of controlling and subjugating humanity forever. As we bring you clips from Whitney's discussion with Natalie, please take a little time to share this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. You can also join the conversation by dropping your comments and observations in the comments section below. We appreciate the support and hope you enjoy the video.
Well, I think as far as this particular election goes, things are going to get crazier as we get closer to November. And, I think that's sort of by design to sort of try and get people, Americans, really engaged with electoral politics again, because I think most people have been really burnt out and really disillusioned with both parties. And I think you're going to continue to see both parties attempt to energize their bases by very perhaps unconventional means, or doing stuff that maybe they haven't done before. But either way, I think regardless of who wins, ultimately a lot of the same people are going to get what they want, because at the end of the day, so much of the stuff that the American people are tired of are really bipartisan agendas, right? And, regardless of who's in office, when there's a crisis, the same people tend to be called upon to solve the crisis. So, a good example of that would be the 2008 economic crisis. BlackRock was basically sent in to help handle the banker bailouts. And then during COVID, when Trump was in office, BlackRock was brought in to essentially design the COVID fiscal policy, which the ramifications of which we're still dealing with. That's just one example, but there's so much, whether it's funding wars or funding, the state of Israel, for example, with billions of U.S. tax dollars and things like that. There tends to be bipartisan consensus about a lot of things. But I think, there's an effort to sort of frame this as an election that's not that. And, each group in their particular, partisan silos, think their candidate is going to be the answer and magically reverse all of this stuff. But unfortunately, both are essentially, bankrolled by, major forces in Silicon Valley specifically. And a lot of those Silicon Valley oligarchs tend to double as contractors to both the military, and also intelligence communities. And so, maybe you'll have sort of the PayPal mafia crowd behind Trump this time, maybe because of JD Vance, but he's got, David Sachs and Elon Musk and people like that in his corner. And even though Peter Thiel's being quite quiet, there seems to be some overlap there as well, which we can get into later. And then, of course, on the Kamala side, you have people like Reid Hoffman and Eric Schmidt, who are also share a lot of overlap with the oligarchs on the other side, like Eric Schmidt and Peter Thiel sit on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Conference, which is kind of notorious for being a closed door meeting of prominent, globalists in the corporate world and in the public sector, and Reid Hoffman and David Sachs and Elon Musk are all part of the so-called PayPal mafia. They just happen to fund different parties, and all of these oligarchs at the end of the day, do they frame the reasoning for why they want these policies differently? They agree about more biometric surveillance, they agree about digital ID, and they ultimately agree about programmable surveillable currency, whether it's a CBDC or a private bank digital currency that's also surveillable and programmable. So, if you're against those things as policies, it's important to pay attention to the policies and not so much the campaign rhetoric, because people tend to forget, during a campaign season, that campaigns are essentially sales pitches, and very few people, when they campaign, actually keep their campaign promises once in office. One example would be, Trump back in 2016 and 2015, campaigning that he was going to reinstate Glass-Steagall. And then when he was actually in office, allowed banks to be deregulated even further. And of course, there's plenty of examples for that for the Democrats as well. Obama being, a really glaring one with, being against the big banks during the 2008 economic crisis, and then having his entire cabinet essentially being chosen by Citigroup, right? Which arguably caused the crisis and had Glass-Steagall repealed to facilitate its merger in the late 90s. So, I mean, this is kind of stuff that, people forget, and it kind of makes me unpopular for bringing it up. I mean, some people don't like to hear this stuff during election season because people get really emotionally invested in particular candidates. But getting emotionally invested in candidates is not my job. My job is to remind people of the policy records of the candidates that are running and the ramifications of the policies that they're suggesting on the campaign trail.
We squabble about everything, but the forces controlling the world easily rise above those things. When people ask how it's possible for a few people to control the Earth's 8 billion inhabitants, this is exactly how it happens. They are always laser-focused on their goals, and even though they may occasionally squabble about how to get things done, they never lose sight of the things they want to achieve, which is, of course, everything people like Whitney Webb have been warning us about for years. Digital IDs, programmable, surveillable money, global ESG credit system, the you'll own nothing and be happy reset. These are all parts of the endgame, and the sooner we all accept that the global elites and the ruling class are different sides of the same coin, the easier it will be to resist these diabolical plans. Let's get back to Whitney's video.
Not trying to say, like, don't vote or anything, do whatever you want on election day. But the problem, as I see it, is that a lot of people on election day are like, as long as I vote, that's all I need to do. I can just go back to living my normal life and not do anything else to stop where the country is going. I'm just going to vote for this one person and that's it. And I think that's the problem. If you want to spend election day voting for someone that you think is better, do whatever you want. I'm not trying to tell people what to do or who to vote for even. But what my problem is thinking that voting is all we need to do to solve the very dire problems that are facing the country right now. Well, I think a big part of it is being offline more and hanging out with people in real life and building, I don't know, alliances, networks, things that will help make your life and your community's life more resilient when the next economic crisis comes, things like that. And I think it's important for people to keep in mind exactly how manipulated social media is today, because I think a lot of people don't realize it. So in 2014, the US Air Force started investigating how to use social media to control people like drones. They spent like a couple $1 million on that research proposal, and other parts of the military and intelligence communities have researched social media for those same ends. And so 2014, sorry, yeah, 2014 was like 10 years ago, right? So a lot of this
Crazy.
stuff has advanced, and
Yeah.
it's not only the US government that's doing it. A lot of other national governments and intelligence agencies have invested a lot of money in developing sort of these mind weapons to be deployed on social media. So I think people should distrust a lot more what they see on social media, whether it's likes or retweets, because it's sort of similar to polling. I don't know if you remember back in 2016 where
Oh
all the
yeah.
mainstream media outlets said Hillary Clinton's definitely going to win, like a
Yeah.
98% chance, and then she didn't win.
Yep.
I mean, the idea of that, you can manipulate polls just like you can manipulate social media posts and make people think certain opinions or
For sure.
certain people or certain policies are more popular than they really are. And they absolutely do that all the time.
For sure.
And considering that, the US military specifically invested so much money in this, and Twitter right now is owned by a major military contractor, Elon Musk, to think that he wouldn't allow those weapons to be deployed on his platform, I think would be very naive. So I think people really need to keep that in mind. And I think there's a deliberate effort to make it hard for people to know what's real and what's not anymore as it relates to being online. And I think the best way to deal with all of these unprecedented, things, I guess, that have been developed to try and manipulate us to unprecedented degrees is to be online maybe a little bit less. And a lot of us got pushed really online, especially during lockdowns in the COVID era. But maybe go outside and hang out with your like neighbors or something, or do stuff that people used to do. Learn to garden, maybe make a community garden. I don't know. But I mean, there's plenty of stuff people can do that doesn't involve, watching the spectacle every day, especially in ways that are, trying to manipulate us. And also, a few years ago, it came out that Facebook was manipulating people's news feeds to manipulate their emotions to make them more depressed. And we're conducting studies. And so they can tailor your news feed directly to you. They're like, this person is doing stuff we don't like. We're going to, bombard them with stuff that's going to make them miserable and depressed. So they don't do stuff or don't do this, or they make this decision or they act this way. They absolutely do that. So I think people need to be very aware of how that happens, and to try and sort of, if you're aware coming into it, it's going to affect you less, but it can still affect you. I mean, we can all be manipulated by this stuff online. I'm no exception, and I don't think anyone else is really either, because they've studied human psychology so much and studied social media so much, and arguably helped make pretty much every social media platform that there is today, and get all the data from it.
We are all basically living in a bubble. The bubble of lies the ruling class and global elites have created, and they will continue to weave their giant web of deception, corruption, and control unless we band together and rise above our differences like they so effortlessly do. What are your thoughts on Whitney's interview? Do you believe there is much more to all these than we are being told? Please drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.